Netflix has really gotten a rotten reputation for producing historical entertainment as of late, for good reasons too. I spared myself the time I would have wasted to watch Cleopatra. I have decided to never watch Barbarians again after that atrocious second season, and I almost felt the same about Vikings Valhalla after I heard that it had the same fatal mistake as Barbarians: the completely ahistorical and excessive demonization of a good Roman general. Barbarians demonized Germanicus, and Valhalla is going to demonize Iodios Maniakes, straying from actual history and making them a villain, all for the sake of I don't even know what. Maybe reinforcing the stereotype that Roman military commanders are always assholes and Germanic heroes are always noble and virtuous? Ugh. But again, Maniakes will be featured, and it's Maniakes, the most competent and awesome Roman general of the 11th century, shown on a production of this scale. And I just can't say no. So I watched it. But I will also present to you everything wrong with the whole Eastern Roman storyline from a historical perspective and talk about the very few things it did right. But overall, you can expect to learn a bit about the early 11th century Roman history if you take away nothing else from the video. Hopefully in time, we may get more accurate mass media representation of the Roman Empire of the Middle Ages. So without further ado, I will use the CinemaSins format to point out what goes wrong, and let's begin. Before showing you Season 3, I must return to the finale of Season 2 to talk about several huge sins. Notably, the characters of Emperor Romanos and Zoe, as well as a few minor inaccuracies. The Roman Emperor. Let's not talk about whatever the hell he is wearing now, that comes later. But first let's see how he is portrayed. There is no precise timeline for Vikings Valhalla. As far as I know, it's just jumbling up events between 1002 and 1066, so I don't know what year this is set in, but the emperor is without a doubt Romanos III Argyros. He ruled the empire for 6 years, from 1028 to 1034, but no matter at which point of his reign the present scene is set, the emperor will not look as young as your local McDonald's employee. Just no. Romanos was born in 968, already 60 years old when he became emperor. The dude here looks 35, tops. Why is Romanos wearing a scale breastplate? He is receiving honorable guests, not preparing to launch a campaign. He should be in the finest silks or maybe even his Loros costume, not this. Romanos is shown receiving his bride from a foreign land. Absolutely did not happen. His entire legitimacy rests on his imperial wife, the niece of Emperor Syracuse II, Zoe Porphyrogeniti, the last of the Macedonian Dynasty. He would never dare to upset the source of his power. Open marriage with a foreign princess is out of the question. No historical basis at all. Oh, you know what? An even bigger affront to history is making this girl, Elena of Trude, into Empress Zoe. This is revealed later in Season 3. So not only do we have a case of an affair that never happened, but also straight-up impersonation. Absolutely a sin. The entire imperial entourage is tiny compared to what Roman emperors do bring with them when they leave Constantinople. Even Romanos III's imperial tent while on military campaign in Aleppo was more grand and rich. You'd think, if he were to truly receive someone as important as a foreign bride, he would show up with a more impressive gang. Speaking of the gang, let's talk about the Roman soldiers. The two guys on the side have equipment fit only for the basic foot soldier, and those in the back don't look much better. We are in the early 11th century, the absolute peak of medieval Roman military power and splendor. The emperor's own bodyguards deserve better dress. For these ceremonial receptions, more ceremonial armor is required. The Macedonian Emperor Constantinos VII Porphyrogenitos describes several scenes of court ceremony and what the troops are supposed to wear. They have these richly embroidered, colorful tunics called scaramangia, gold belts, and even heavily decorated coats known as kaftans. The goal here isn't practicality in combat, but to look pretty. This gang is too dull and sad. Okay, now we move on to season 3, which is 7 years after this scene. The story picks back up in Syracuse, Sicily. So we're smack into the conquest of Sicily by Georgios Maniakis. I guess that puts us in around 1040. Now, I don't want to condemn the design of the city of Syracuse as I don't know what it would have looked like then, but I can say for sure that it was not some impregnable fortress on the top of a hill, but a prosperous maritime city right by the Ionian Sea. In the show, it's like this hyper-militarized base, which it wasn't, especially since the Arab conquerors of Sicily gradually invested in Palermo as their most important city. Syracuse wasn't as important as it was back in antiquity. Its design is sloppy to say the least. I'm not an expert in siege warfare, but usually when a city is besieged, you don't let out this many of your defenders to engage in a proper field battle with the invading army this far away from where you're supposed to be defending. No, Your Eminence, the Emperor of the Romans never came to Sicily. Not for a battle, not for anything, since Emperor Constantinos IV from 400 years ago. Historically, Emperor Michael IV sent Maniakis and that was it. He never voyaged to Sicily himself. Oh god. The Emperor is Romanos III, not Michael IV. Wrong Emperor. Ah! Oh yeah, did I mention that Romanos only reigned for 6 years, and this takes place 7 years after we last saw him? Good grief. You know what? At least the Emperor's armor looks good. A long shot from what everyone else is wearing. Golden decorated Clivanion seems to be in order. The lack of a helmet is jarring, but let's remove a sin to reward their good work here. It's rare. I mean, look at your typical Roman soldier here. The red tunic is fine and all, but what the hell is that plate armor? Medieval Romans almost never used any sort of plate armor, and certainly not on a large scale. Your average foot soldier would have been in a mail shirt, or scales if they were luckier. And why is no one wearing a helmet? Maniakis looks cool, but terrible. Again with the armor problem, it's completely made up. The Romans never wore this sort of pseudo-fantasy gear, and Maniakis is literally depicted in its full panoply in the miniatures of the Madriskalitzes. He wears a red Peleus Pannonicus military hat, a light bluish-purplish military cloak, a breastplate with large scales, pteryges on his arms and legs. The costume designer could have literally copied this miniature and added so much authenticity points. But no, give the General Maniakis himself this useless crap. Maniakis never asked the Emperor to come to Sicily either in real history. The Emperor of the Romans calling his empire Byzantine? Blasphemous. Actually, no. Constantinople was secure. There was a Bulgarian uprising in the Balkans a bit later after the whole Sicily episode, in which Michael IV crushed. So really, no eastern enemy was eyeing the Queen of Cities hungrily in 1040, when Constantinople was probably at its safest. The Emir of Syracuse we just saw wasn't anybody important. The fight for Sicily was between the Roman Empire and the Emirate in North Africa, not the Sicilian emirs themselves, who barely mattered. Even if the Arabs pushed the Romans back, someone as strategically sound as Maniakis should realize that Constantinople, the capital, would be way out of reach of the emirs of either Sicily or Carthage. What is he yapping about? Sorry to break it to you, but Jerusalem is literally safely in Arab hands right now. The Fatimids, who hold Jerusalem, are actually on quite good terms with the Romans, if I may add. Romanos III actually funded the restoration of a church there just a bit back. The holy city is under no threat at all. The writers seem to forget that the Romans lost Jerusalem for good 4 centuries ago. Maniakes was not a religious fanatic, nor was any Roman general, to be honest. The Romans didn't have the concept of a religious war, which the Arabs and later the Latins would have. This is highly out of character for Maniakes, among other things, like making him a dumbass completely unaware of the geopolitical situation in the Mediterranean. According to the contemporary source, the Strategikon of Kikafmenos, Harald only had 500 Varangians with him when he first came to the empire. Maybe that number grew over time, but I'm just pointing it out. Well, the Varangians definitely helped in taking many cities of Sicily under Maniakes, but they never did conquer Sicily completely on their own. Now that is fantasy. Varangian armor is not very well recorded, as it varied greatly depending on the rank of the Varangian, so I won't comment much on this, but I do believe they would have had helmets. Now we get to the whole jealous Maniakes plotting against brave Harald plotline. No, this never happened. He doesn't need to talk behind the Viking mercenaries' back to get into the Emperor's esteem. His own military talent made sure that he rose to the high ranks he possesses. If anything, Maniakes was himself victim of such plotting, of jealous subordinates and rivals envious of his success. It's honestly insulting to find such portrayal of him. A Roman general calling the empire he serves as Byzantine. Blasphemous. Again with the fanatic characterization of Maniakes. It was never recorded that he hated the Saracens with a burning passion. If anything, he hated his incompetent Christian subordinates with a blinding fury, publicly humiliating his admiral and his Lombard allies while in Sicily. That was what bit him in the ass later, his overly direct dealings with his own men. No, Romanos, you got here because you were forced to divorce your own wife and marry the niece of the Bulgar Slayer, not because you played your cards well. So stop flattering yourself. This is some nice storytelling, but in case you are wondering, no, Harald Hardrada was never credited with some ingenious strategy to break the walls of Syracuse. The Romans are shown bearing a standard with the Macedonian sun, which was used by, well, the ancient Macedonians, not the Macedonian Dynasty of medieval Rome. Got mixed up, huh? The flags of Sicily show the crescent motif, which, I believe, wasn't widely used in Islamic heraldry until the 14th century. Meanwhile, the crescent has been known to be heavily associated with the Eastern Romans and the city of Constantinople itself for a long time. It would have been much more fitting to let the Romans hold a crescent flag instead of the sun they're carrying here. Besides it being funny that the Roman emperor is letting his translator from Greek to Arabic be a Viking, an official translator, rather than a makeshift military interpreter, would have been more suited for an important parley between two rulers. I'm afraid that the Egyptian Fatimids weren't embroiled at all in this conflict for Sicily. As I said before, the main forces came from North Africa. Northwest Africa, not Northeast Africa. So, the Emir of Syracuse was indeed engaged in single combat with someone in the Roman army, but it was during the heat of the Battle of Troina, the decisive Roman victory which crushed the innumerable African reinforcements to Sicily, not during a gamble for the fate of Syracuse. And that someone who fought him was not Harald Hardrada nor any Varangian, but another northern mercenary, Guillaume the Norman adventurer who got the nickname Iron Arm for slaying the Emir of Syracuse. When helmet is finally shown, but it looks like the ancient imperial Gallic type helmet. Your Eminence is not how you address a Roman emperor. It would have been more fitting if you were talking to a metropolitan. No, the Romans did not destroy Syracuse, they just took it. Wow, an atheist rational thinking Viking in the Middle Ages. That's less believable than Maniakes being a crazy mass murderer willing to do anything to bring down Harald. Yeah, this totally didn't happen. I can't claim to know what Maniakes thought, but this speech does sound more like modern European far-right rhetoric rather than some general medieval concerns. They didn't have access to this kind of demographic data back then. So the victorious army now returns to Constantinople. But normally, a triumph would be entered from the Golden Gate, not some narrow passageway where only a small portion of the population can watch and cheer for their heroes. Republican-era Roman armor. The music in the background is not Roman at all, and sounds weirdly reminiscent of an Ottoman Turkish march. When the medieval Romans held triumphant processions for their generals, the main music would have been victory hymns sung by the priests and people, not this ruckus. I do like how the people are shown waving a branch of some plant, which shows someone in the production team actually did some research and discovered that during Emperor Heraclius' triumph after defeating Persia, the grateful populace welcomed their emperor with olive branches. Unfortunately, I don't think they're waving an olive branch here, so I was about to take a sin off, but nah. This child's dress looks very late antiquity-esque, with the fur cap and a tunic like that. I would assume that this is the Patriarch of Constantinople. Let's talk about his atrocious vestments. He is dressed like a Russian priest instead of the ecumenical patriarch. His Philonion is 100% Russian style and anachronistic. He doesn't have an omophorion either. This is what an 11th century patriarch should have looked like. The emperor's dress isn't much better either, especially the crown, which is Western style here. Alps to Asia. Well, the historical Romanos was also quite delusional at times, but even he would have known that the Alps had been lost to the Romans for a good 6 centuries at least by then. This is not Zoe. This is the Elena girl from Trude. Zoe's garments seem to be by far the worst. Even worse than that of the Patriarch and the Emperor. What is she wearing? The crown is not a crown at all, but just a band of metal stripes glued together. I have no idea what is that around her neck, and the rest of her clothes look like some pop star's outfit. Why is it so hard to accurately depict a Roman empress? Zoe's mosaic is right in the Hagia Sophia. If they didn't know what to dress this pseudo-Zoe, even just blatantly copying the mosaic would have been so much better. I'd prefer an accurately dressed fake empress to an inaccurately dressed fake empress. Harald Hardrada was not named Spataro Candidatos for his actions in Sicily. Once more I will turn to Kekavmenos, who says explicitly that Harold was named Manglavitis as recompense for Sicily, a title for a corps of the imperial bodyguard. Georgios Maniakes received no reward at all for his valiant service in Sicily, but rather he was thrown into jail for menacing and humiliating his admiral, which I talked about earlier. Oh, and yeah, Harold was named Spatarganidatus in his life, but that was after Sicily, for his actions in suppressing the Bulgarian revolt of Peter Delian in 1041, according to Kekavmenos, who was there himself and beheld Emperor Michael IV personally bestow this title in Mos Neapolis in the Thracian front, and not in Constantinople. So even if we talk about Harald becoming Spartacandidatos, this scene is riddled with errors. Wrong person, Michael, not Zoe. Wrong place, and wrong time. And that whole Bulgarian plot wasn't even ever shown in the show. Truly a heinous sin, because that's when Harald gained his awesome nickname, the Bulgar Burner. We were robbed, Netflix. No, Spartacandidatos was not the highest honor. Far from it. It was about 9th in rank based on precedence. That may vary over time, but let's look at Kikamenos again. He says, Harald never complained about being named Manglavitis or Spartacandidatos, which clearly indicates that for someone who did as much for the empire as Harald, these were low rewards. But Harald was just very humble. No, 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 no. The Spartacandidatos never wore this kind of armor. No medieval Roman dignitary did either, as this is ancient gear. Spartacandidati did have special attire of their own, most notably wearing a golden chain around the neck. But Republican Roman armor? Get out of here. Oh, and did I mention that at the end of a Roman triumph, the victorious generals are supposed to be presented to the emperor in the hippodrome, not wherever this is. So even the place is wrong for this scene, which I have talked about for so long now and probably didn't even cover every error. God, this is horrible. The emperor and empress kissing like this at a public event, in front of so many people and soldiers? Not a chance. Propriety was very important for the Romans. There is no such Roman tradition. The Norse sagas do record that Harald and the Varangians were allowed to plunder the palace treasury every time an emperor died, if we take the sagas for their word. But still, it's not anything like this. The real Romanos and the real Zoe were not a happy couple. And Zoe being Zoe, she was promiscuous and her husband couldn't do anything about it. Need I remind again that Zoe was the true power behind the throne, not Romanos? Zoe being promiscuous is in character, but she did not have a thing for Harald. Apparently, some Norse saga claims she wanted to marry him, but this is also the saga which claims that the childless Zoe had a granddaughter called Maria. Talk about credibility. The Varangian walking around in Republican Roman armor, while no Roman general wears this, even if their gear is no less awful. The hilarity of this scene is a sin in itself. The chambers of the Empress, which is in Eginikeon, a part of the palace where only women and eunuchs may enter, is not accessible to bearded men, like, a handsome Varangian. But I think Harald's friends all realized how sus Zoe's request is. In these days, the second most powerful man of the empire was a eunuch. And, as I've already said, the Spartacandidatos wasn't so important. Stop bloating Harald. Okay, so I actually really like this storyline and this scene. Monastic settlements in the empire were indeed often menaced by banditry, even in relatively chill provinces like Greece. Taking a sin off. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm no expert on monasticism, but I think nuns may be allowed to consume alcohol under certain circumstances, like medical reasons, and it certainly looks like a medical reason here. Why is Leif so surprised? After perusing knowledge for 7 years, he should know better, no? So, the nun's name is Tamar, and I like it. It's not a common name, except among the Georgians. Either someone in the writing team did some research and discovered the increasing Georgian influence and presence in 11th century Byzantine monastic and military life, or it's a pure coincidence and I'm just overthinking. But I'll just pretend the writers were intentionally referencing this fact and take off a sin because the show desperately needs me to take off more sins. Yaroslav the Wise was not recorded to have been to Constantinople, and such an alliance between the Romans and the Rus against Pechenegs didn't exist either. I thought Harald only had 700 Varangians, or 500 if we take Ekamina's word. 2,000 is exaggerating. When receiving a royal foreign guest, the best the Emperor of the Romans could offer is this tiny dinner table? Normally, foreign embassies would be received in the Chrysotriclinos, the main ceremonial hall of the Great Palace. Harald was never, ever in his career just one step away from the Emperor. He couldn't be. The entire concept of a Varangian Guard was employing loyal barbarians of the north, whose origin automatically bars them from achieving high ranks of power. This is ahistorical. If the brother has a name as common as Nikitas, you'd expect the same for the sister. But no, they just had to name her Esther, which was very, 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 very infrequently used in the Middle Ages, and never have I ever encountered any Eastern Roman individual with that name. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, but I'm adding a sin for now. Is it just me, or does the attire of the peasants of Corfu look a little too late for the 11th century? Granted, the dress of the lower classes never changed much, but this still looks more like Ottoman or modern era clothing. The subtitles are completely wrong. Leif is saying, yes okay, and not, no thanks. Once more with the inaccurate clothing. The priest is dressed completely in black like a modern Orthodox cleric. That was not the case in the 11th century. Priests would have worn a white sticharion tunic and an epitrachilion and philonion over it, both of which would have some color or decoration. I won't describe the full attire of Byzantine bishops, but you get the idea. And I'm honestly sick of seeing them always depicted like their modern Greek Orthodox counterparts in media. Even Dovahadi does that. Later, Callinicus would reveal that he was afraid to reveal his map in front of the priest due to perceived heresy. But if the good father was gambling, I don't think he would have minded some more rule-breaking. And no, that is not true. The Church does not consider a round earth as heresy. The Greeks and Romans stopped believing in flat earth since the 1st century, according to Pliny, and the spherical shape of the earth had been proven even earlier by Ptolemy. In the Eastern Roman Empire, such writings survived, and students learned them. There may have been some doubts in the Latin world after the fall of the Western Empire, but even they had some approximate memory of Pliny. This is unbelievably inaccurate. Let's go, guys! We now know that the Romans were the first to know of America. Yes, Maniakis, you of all people should know Vikings cannot become emperors. That's why emperors hired them, because they have nothing to gain from their death. If we're talking about Constantinos VIII, the brother of Basilios II, then I cannot do anything except laugh at this ridiculous statement. Ha 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 ha. He ruled for almost his entire life as co-emperor, for 66 years, making him the longest reigning Roman emperor, period. He reigned alone for 3 years too after the Bulgar Slayer's death, So even if we take that interpretation, it's still wrong. Romanus III ruled for 6 years only. Now is that almost a decade? Again with the ancient armor. Harald is in ancient Roman fashion too. Everyone is dressed like an ancient Roman. We're 1,000 years apart. Oh no, it's one of those ancient Roman orgy parties that the media loves to show, because the audience loves to see an excessive amount of sex. These things weren't around in the Christian Empire anymore. Netflix seems to like to either add things too ancient or things too modern for no reason at all. Harald never got this close to an emperor, certainly not Romanos. He was loyal and close to Michael IV the Paphlagonian, but definitely not on brother terms with him either. That is only what an emperor would call his most intimate friends, not his bodyguard. Kudos to the team for knowing about Romanos and Zoe's infertile marriage. The couple tried everything, from medicine to even pagan magic, but hooking up with the Varangian was not one of their solutions. Romanos was murdered in a bathhouse, not a brothel or a secret orgy cavern, or whatever this is. And he drowned. His throat was not slit. Why is Maniakes here? After Sicily, he would have been locked up in prison or have been sent back to Italy to fight the Normans by Michael V. The accumulation of errors has made the story deviate completely from real history. Romanos had no other wives. Polygamy was a sin, and no emperor messed around with that. Even Leon VI, in his bid to create an heir, only had 4 wives successively, not at once. Maniakes is a general and doesn't possess power over civil judicial affairs. His authority lays within the military. And nor does the church for that matter. Ecclesiastical courts dealt with ecclesiastical affairs and trials of clergymen. They could interfere with marriage and divorce and inheritance at times, but that was it. Netflix forgets that the legal system of the Eastern Roman Empire was perhaps the most advanced in the world at that time. Civil and ecclesiastical law didn't mix. Okay, so let's dive a bit into Roman law here, since our dear Maniakes isn't well acquainted with them. At this time, the Romans mostly used the laws of Leon III the Isaurian's Eclogi. The early Macedonian revisions of the law had no really major changes. According to the Eclogi then, adultery is punished by slitting off noses, not death. Again, wrong. The Varangians, if they commit perjury, would have their tongues cut out according to the Eclogi. The Romans had greatly reduced their death sentences under the influence of Christian morality, preferring mutilation instead for greater crimes. Well, they got the name of the patriarch right, thankfully. Alexius Thucydides was indeed the patriarch for this period, but his dress does not correspond to the period at all. Honestly, I'm sick of pointing out the clerical dress errors at this point. Harald was thrown into jail for some time after Michael IV's death, in the tumult of Zoe's conflict with the next emperor Michael V, but he was never accused of regicide. But everyone in this room knows a foreigner, a Viking, would never be able to become emperor, and nobody calls Maniakes on his obvious crap, which is stupid. Roman judges weren't dumb, and everybody could see that this is blackmail. Right in the middle of court. Really? The church lacks the authority to preside in this civil court case, and the patriarch couldn't condemn people to death either. Maniakes directly going against what the court has proclaimed, that the Varangians are exonerated. Normally that would be illegal, but what the heck. They already made Maniakes into someone completely different. A supervillain with unlimited power. They can do anything with this character now. This right here is a complete perversion of Maniakes' downfall story. First, he was not a creep. He would not take advantage of widows like that. When he revolted against the emperor, he did so because his own wife was ravished by a rival of his called Romanos Kleros, who thought it fun to drag a woman's honor into a dispute between two men. Skleros was a favorite of the emperor Constantinos IX Monomachos, and so that's how the emperor got on the wrong side of Maniakes, whose men proclaimed him emperor. Maniakes possessed no imperial ambition on his own. This here is also baloney. Why would the people of Constantinople accept Maniakes as their emperor? They protected and supported Zoe, their purple-born princess. Any shot of Maniakes becoming emperor in this scenario, when he was not proclaimed by his troops, rests with Zoe. If she dies, so does his claim. His threat here serves no purpose and even endangers his own cause. But all I am saying would only be illogical in the normal universe, where Zoe is the last scion of the Macedonian Dynasty and Roman politics functioned like Roman politics. Maniakes would have become emperor had he won the civil war with Monomachos, which he didn't, so he was never emperor, and this is wrong. Maniakes doesn't even have correct imperial attire, for God's sake. Take a good look at his clothes and tell me what they look like. That's right, early imperial Roman dress. And right by his side is the patriarch, and post-medieval vestments. A duel between Harald and Maniakes never happened. The Roman general died in his civil war with Monomachos, slain by an enemy arrow. Harald leaving Constantinople so early? His adventures in Bulgaria, with the power struggle between Zoe and Michael V, all not even shown? And he leaves so easily. Historically, he was not permitted to leave by Zoe, and he lost the boat trying to escape. The final scene just seems like someone wanted to make a tribute to Gladiator with the climax of everything that had been wrong with the Byzantine arc, and evil Maniakes is slain. Now this has become entirely fictional instead of just deviating from history. And that's it. We're done. Harald returns to Norway, and I bet we'll never see the Eastern Empire on this show again. Here is the final sin count.
I condemn you to the most horrific of deaths.
Thanks for watching. Shout out to my first two patrons over on Patreon, Dragonlord and K. Konstantinos. Thanks so much for your early support, especially you, K. Konstantinos, for getting the highest tier, Autocrator Toromeon. Truly, you're a mad lad, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You will get all the outrageous rewards you deserve. To anyone else watching and interested in supporting me on Patreon, if you guys saw my post, I have a special deal for anyone who would like to become an early patron. The offer is still valid for a time, and I look forward to welcoming you there with great recompenses. If anyone is interested in checking out the primary sources I referenced in this video, please check the description. So that's it, and see you soon. Hope you liked the video format and would like to see more.